also like to thank Phil Arnold for a wonderful job that he did with the photography. Again, this is a preview, so it's an abbreviated presentation. The in-depth presentation that we give at the Long Beach Expo is about 3 to 4 times as long, so we have quite a bit more to discuss. So we'll begin by taking a look at designations or qualifiers after coins. That'll be things like, full red or full bands. We'll look at grading proof coins, grading the ultra high grade moderns, that's the MS67, 8, 9, and 70 coins, and again, like we said, unusual and difficult coins. We'll start with designations. So what are they? They're a rating that we add after the numerical grade to describe an attribute of a series that has importance and value to collectors. Now, for example, if something really doesn't matter that much to collectors, we won't describe it. But there are certain areas of certain coins that people seem to focus on and have a great deal of interest in. These fall into 3 main categories: color, strike, and surface reflectivity or contrast. We'll take a little closer look. Color, on mint state and proof copper coins, that'd be half cents, large cents, small cents, or 2-cent pieces, and patterns, of course, one of 3 color ratings is assigned. Either red, which we abbreviate RD, red and brown, RB, or brown, BN. Obviously, color is an unbroken continuum, just like grading. So the 3 designations represent ranges of the remaining original red color. Okay? So let's take a look at what a red copper coin would look like. Okay, this is a coin that's going to have 95% or more of its original mint red color. And we're illustrating here an 1851 large cent, which somehow was able to survive with almost all of its original red color intact. You see a little bit here in this section that's starting to turn brown, and over time, eventually, this whole coin will be brown at some point. But so far, it's led a pretty lucky life. Now, again, up to 5% brown is permissible on a full red coin. So you sort of see around 95% red on this one. Now, red and brown takes up a very large segment. That will take you anywhere from 5% to 95% of the original red color. So it's a huge portion of the coins that are going to be rated RB, or red and brown. Now, we're going to show 3 examples of a red and brown large cent. One at the high end, in other words, containing mostly red, one around the middle, about half and half, and one at the low end containing virtually no red, but still more than the 5%. This one here that we're showing is at the high end of the RB scale. I would say anywhere between 75 and 90% of the full red is still visible on this coin. But you see there's just too much brown. There's more than 5% brown on this coin, so that would take it out of the full red category. Okay? Here's another red-brown coin, and this is, sort of in that large middle area, I would say between 25 and 75% brown. The coin here looks probably close to half and half. So, there's red usually clings around the stars or in the recessed areas, and in the larger open areas of the coin, such as the cheek or the fields, any large area, you're going to be getting some of that brown color come in. And finally, here is the low end of the red and brown scale. These I would call virtually brown, and these coins are showing between 5 and 25% of the original mint red. And once again, it's usually right around the devices. You'll see the red around the date, around the stars, of course. On the inside of the lettering, you'll see a little bit of the red. but virtually the whole fields now and the main device, virtually all of that has turned brown. Okay. And finally, a coin that we would rate brown will display less than 5% of its original mint red color. And this coin has pretty much no red left. But it's still not a bad looking coin. You'll see here, you know, it's an uncirculated coin. It just has none of the original mint red left. So that is how we evaluate copper coins. And in the actual class, we show examples of 3 or 4 types of large cents. Indian cents, Lincoln cents, and 2-cent pieces are all shown. So this was just one example of one coin to give you a preview. The next qualifier concerns what we call strike, or areas of certain portions of the design, okay? And the two most well-known of these, of course, are full band Mercury dimes and full head standing Liberty quarters. Now what happens is, as these coins are struck, the die slowly wears, and portions of these designs sort of flatten out and never come into the coin, even when it's new. Also, weak striking pressure, planchet irregularities, the same things that normally cause weak strikes on coins will cause certain areas of the coin not to be fully struck. We currently recognize 4 strike designations in 5 different series. We recognize full steps on a Jefferson nickel, abbreviated FS, and that would be on the building Monticello on the reverse of the coin. We recognize full bands on Mercury dimes, and recently we've begun to signify full bands on a Roosevelt dime. Full head on standing Liberty quarters, both type 1 and type 2. As some of you may know, the type 1 quarters had a very different head than the type 2 quarters. We will illustrate in this preview, we'll take a look at the type 2 quarters. But we do cover both in the full course. And finally, full bell lines on Franklin halves. Of course, that will be found on the reverse of the coin, and there's some horizontal lines crossing the Liberty bell on a Franklin half, and we'll discuss those as well. So let's look at full bands on a Mercury dime. The center part of the design should have 2 small bands. In other words, let's take a look. This coin is an example with no bands. These central area you see are the faces or the sticks, and there are 2 bands that join these. In this case, without bands, this is a weakly struck coin, and you can't even really tell that the coin had 2 bands to begin with. This is what we would designate as a partial bands coin. In other words, here are the same, this is the same area of the reverse, and you can definitely see now that there are 2 bands joining the sticks. You see a little bit of the split there, but it's certainly not complete. And in order to be full bands, you have to be absolutely complete. No interruption. This coin here is our third example. This is what we would call just short of full bands. Okay, you see the center section here is still blended. So even though this coin shows 2 bands very clearly, you need a fully complete center section to be designated an FB. Finally, here is a minimum full bands coin. You see there actually is a division there. It's fully across. It's not quite uniformly deep across the entire coin, but there is separation. So this would be the minimum that we would call for a full bands coin. And finally, there's what we call the complete FB, or the McDonald's arches, some people have called it, where you have 2 fully split bands and a complete trough between them of equal depth. So this would be sort of an ultimate full strike, full bands Mercury dime. And certain dates of Mercury dimes are quite scarce with full bands. As a matter of fact, the 1945 Philadelphia coin is an extremely scarce coin with full bands and carries a substantial premium if you locate that coin with full bands. Other coins, full bands are fairly commonly seen. We also take a look at full heads on standing Liberty quarters. For us to designate a full head, we need to see 95% or more of the intended detail. In most cases, that means we need to see 3 complete and distinct leaves, and the outline of the cap around the face and the ear hole must be present. So let's take a look at what heads look like on standing Liberty quarters. This is a flat head, okay? This coin is uncirculated, but you almost looks like the head was hit with a small hammer. You see no detail in the center. It's actually a little bit dish looking. In other words, this was never struck into the coin to begin with. And certain dates of standing Liberty quarters very often are seen with pretty much what's known as a flat head. It's not a very attractive coin like this, unfortunately. This is an example of what we would call just short of a full head. You see the head is rounded, you've got a good cheek and the eye, and you see some of the hair, but you don't really see the 3 distinct leaves in the head, and the area of the hairline that would separate the hair in the face is really not visible on this coin. So we would call this coin short of full head. It's not a flat head, but it would not make PCGS full head designation. Now this next example is our minimum definition of a full head. In other words, this is about as low as you can get and still have a full head. You see here the 3 leaves right here in this section of the head, and you see a complete hairline covering the forehead down around the ear and then down the hairline right here where I'm tracing. And then this area here is the ear hole, okay? So this is a minimum full head standing Liberty quarter. A more typical full head standing Liberty quarter, you can see the leaves are easier to see here, and you see there's some sharpness to this division, and you have the ear section here. So this is what you most often see if a coin is just routinely called a full head quarter. This is about what you'd see. And then finally we'll take a look at a complete full head. This is an extremely well struck coin, you can tell. The hairline flowing into the ear is extremely sharp. The 3 leaves are very sharp, and I would say that a standing Liberty quarter in terms of getting a full head doesn't get much sharper or does not show much more detail than this. So this was how the coin was originally designed to look. Unfortunately, relatively few of them ended up getting a strike this good. But anyway, that's how we look at standing Liberty quarters. As I said, the type 1 full head quarter has a different head style on it, and there's a few areas of that require special consideration, a little different than a type 2 full head. So keep that in mind. Lastly, the third major qualifier is surface, okay? And that usually concerns mint state coins, most often Morgan dollars. We recognize certain degrees of reflectivity in the fields, okay? Most often we call these coins either proof-like or deep mirror proof-like, abbreviated DMPL. We recognize these 2 levels, like I said, PL and dimple. A non-PL coin, okay, this is an 1878 CC Morgan dollar, has no surface reflectivity. In other words, this is a pretty high-grade coin, but you can see the surfaces are somewhat sort of matte looking. I wouldn't really call them cloudy, but they're just frosty. In other words, you really can't see any reflection in the surface, okay? Here's a coin that we might call proof-like, and you see the contrast that you're starting to pick up between the head, which is sort of a whitish color, and the background fields, which now are starting to look dark, and that is a reflection of the surrounding room. Usually a clear reflection in the 2 to 4 inch range is what we would call suitable for proof-like. Okay, so this is a coin that might get a proof-like designation. If that reflectivity gets even deeper, at say at around 6 inches, we'll call the coin deep mirror proof-like, or DMPL. And you can see this coin, if you could hold your finger in front of the fields, you might be able to see your entire finger and into your hand, and maybe even as deep as your wrist in some areas. So this coin would have a lot of surface reflectivity, and we would consider this to be, like I said, a dimple or deep mirror proof-like. On proof coins, we make recognition if there's high visual contrast between the devices and the fields. Usually appears as frosting on the devices and reflectivity in the fields. And again, like proof-like and deep mirror proof-like, we recognize 2 levels of contrast: Cameo and deep Cameo. And we'll take a look at a quick example of those. Again, using a Morgan dollar. This is a coin that has no Cameo contrast. In other words, it's deeply reflective, but you see very little contrast between the devices and the fields. In other words, they both have the same degree of reflectivity, and there is no frosting on either the eagle on the back or the head of Liberty on the obverse. Okay, so this is just a routine non-Cameo proof coin. Here's what we might call a Cameo contrast. In other words, the head has a sort of a whitish matte look color to it, whereas the fields retain their deep mirror reflectivity. Similarly, on the reverse, the lettering, the wreath, and the eagle all have some Cameo contrast, some whitish sort of matte looking color against a deeply reflective field. Now we would call, again, like I said, we would call this Cameo, but this is not nearly as frosty and deep as the contrast can get. If it's extremely heavily frosted, that would qualify for deep Cameo, or what we would call decam. Okay, and this coin is a wonderful example of what might be called a very heavily frosted proof coin. Okay, the head, lettering, date, heavily frosted with very deep mirror surfaces, and the same thing, you'll see that on the reverse. So we have 3 basic levels of proof reflectivity: non-reflective, Cameo, and then of course deep Cameo. We're going to shift gears now, move off of qualifiers, and we're going to talk about grading proof coins a little bit. In our webinar last month, Grading 101, we really did not discuss proof coins, and there's a couple reasons why we didn't. It has similarity to mint state coins, of course, but there's some important differences. For one thing, on surface preservation, the most frequently encountered problem with proofs is hairlines, whereas with mint state coins, usually the problem is bag marks. Bag marks on proof coins are rarely encountered, but fine lines from improper wiping or cleaning are often seen on proof coins, particularly on pre-1916 issues. Okay, so for surface preservation, we're not really looking for scratches and marks and dings. We're sort of looking for what you might call fine scratches, or what we would call hairlines. Strike is usually not an issue on proof coins. They're struck multiple times under high pressure, and the proof dies are not used to strike a lot of coins, so they don't very often wear out. So strike is usually not something is something that we would worry about looking at a proof coin. They're going to be well struck. You can pretty much be guaranteed. Luster is going to be different also due to heavy dye polishing. Proofs display what we call deep watery fields with little of that cartwheel effect that we discussed on business strikes. The exception, of course, are satin and matte finish proofs that were struck in the early part of the 20th century, and you see occasionally on Lincoln cents or Buffalo nickels or certain Indian gold coins, and St. Gaudens were struck with a matte finish. But that's an exception, of course. And finally, eye appeal. Proof coins, of course, can tone, and a nicely toned proof coin is certainly a very attractive coin, and eye appeal plays a part. So with that said, let's look at a couple examples of proof coins coming up. Subtle differences in grades are difficult to illustrate photographically on proofs. So we're just going to look at what we might call 4 different major categories that should be easy to distinguish. One is circulated proofs. You know, some proof coins did go into circulation, particularly what we would call a quasi-pattern issue, such as the 1856 Flying Eagle cent, which they struck many hundreds of, or the 1836 Gobrecht dollar, which some found their way into circulation. We'll look at some low-grade proofs, usually heavily hairlined, with cloudy surfaces, just not extremely attractive coins. Mid-grade proofs in the 63 to 64 range that may have some light hairlines or a few tiny marks on them, a little bit of cloudiness, but you know, certainly not a bad-looking coin. And then some of the higher grade proofs in the 65 to 67 range that'll have very few hairlines or marks and will be pretty visually attractive. So again, we'll take a look at a couple photographs of each. And again, in the full course, we go into more depth and have more examples. But this will give you an idea. This looks like a pretty ordinary looking 2-cent piece until you remember that 1873 was a proof-only issue. So this coin started life as a proof and went into circulation and got quite a bit of circulation. Here is an 1836 Gobrecht dollar. Again, these were all originally proof strikings, and this coin ended up going into circulation, and looks like it wore down, you know, probably into the mid-VF range on this coin. Here's a low-grade proof coin. This is a 1861 seated dollar, and I don't think you have to look very hard to see the hairlines on the coin. There are a lot of them. They're deep. The coin was heavily wiped at one time, and it left it in a pretty sorry state for a proof coin. It's another proof silver dollar that you see pretty fine scratches all throughout the fields on this coin. Not a lot on the head or the eagle because, of course, they're somewhat frosted, but that reflective surface easily picks up hairlines. So you can see that the coin did get quite a bit of hairlines from improper wiping. This might be a middle grade proof. This might be a proof 63 or so. It's really not a terrible looking coin, but there's a, you know, some little spotting and discoloration on the coin. So, you know, would certainly not be a high grade proof by any stretch. And here's another coin that might qualify as a mid grade proof. You see a little mark on the cheek like that. You know, it's not terribly bad, and this photograph may make it look worse than it does in real life. But this might be a proof 63 Barbour half. Okay, certainly not heavily hairlined or unattractive enough to be a proof 60 or 61. But those scratches would preclude a higher grade of proof 65. And at the high end, proof 65, 6, and 7, you're not going to see much in the way of hairlines or anything unattractive on the coin. On this particular coin, there's a few little spots that you see in the fields here, here, and here, maybe a spot on the shield here, but none of those are serious enough to take it down into the proof 63 range or even 64. But this particular coin with these spots probably would not rate as high as proof 67, so this might be a typical proof 65. And again, here's a $20 Liberty that we consider to be a pretty high-grade proof. You don't see much in the way of hairlines or marks or spots. The fields look very reflective, and just pretty nice coin overall. You know, I apologize. I had my thing off the screen and I didn't see. It looked like we got a couple questions on full band Mercurys. And one of the questions says, what is full band Mercury is only the center band, not all three. We concentrate on the center band since that's the band that most likely will not be complete. So I would say yes, we basically just take a look at the center band. Someone asked what type of magnification that we use. We don't sell magnifying glasses, but we recommend anything probably in the 5 to 10 power range for grading, and I think most of our graders tend towards the low end of that, probably around 5 power. Look for a triplet lens, in other words, a 3-lens magnifier which minimizes distortion at the edges. Okay. All right, let's continue. Glad I got to those questions. This particular segment of the course concerns ultra-high-grade moderns. And by ultra-high-grade moderns, we mean coins grading 70, 69, 68, and maybe as low as 67. But these are all coins that are struck in the last 25 or 30 years for the most part. The area really got active around 1986 when the bullion eagles came out, you know, the gold eagles and then the silver eagles. And of course the U.S. commemorative program really got going full blast in the mid-80s as well. And a lot of these coins were submitted to PCGS, and of course being fresh off the press, a lot of them got extremely high grades. So like we said, it began in the mid-80s, this modern era, and it concerns the ultra-high grades of 68, 9, and 70. In fact, of the ultra-high grades, over 95% of the proof moderns grade 69 or 70. These coins are very hard to see the differences in, and they're very tough to show photographically. Because first off, whatever imperfections you're going to find on a 69 are going to be very, very tiny. And second of all, very often it's necessary to rotate the coin under the light in order to see the defect. In other words, at a certain angle, that defect may not show up. Okay? So we'll do our best. So we're going to take a look at some of these ultra-high grade moderns, but understand that telling the difference may be somewhat difficult, okay? This is a proof 70, 1984 Olympic $10 gold coin. And as you can see, you can spend quite a bit of time looking at the coin and not find a whole lot wrong. We usually define it as having no defects of any kind visible with a 5-power glass, free of hairlines, lint marks, planchet flaws, spots, or stains. So that's what we're looking for on a 70, is pretty much visual perfection under 5 power. Now, it's often said that you put enough magnification on anything and you can find a flaw. And of course, if you were to put this coin under a 20 or 30 or 40 power binocular scope, I'm sure you could find very, very tiny little defects or marks on the coin that might show up. That's really not enough to disqualify it from 70 because, like you said, you put enough magnification on anything and you can find a problem. And if that were the case, then there would be no such thing as a 70, and the 70 grade would not exist, and then the whole point becomes moot. There's no sense in having a grade that nothing can achieve. Here's a 69. And at first glance, you're going to look at this coin for a while and say, you know what, it looks pretty darn good. And the answer is, well, that's because it is. A 69 is a darn good coin. But if you look very, very carefully and take some time to study the coin, look at the photograph carefully, and watch what pops up on the screen. Two little arrows here pointing to a tiny stain behind the runner's foot here, and a little arrow here showing a couple of tiny little spots under the feathers on the eagle on the back. And this is sort of what the difference between a 69 and a 70 is. And the answer, it's not a whole lot. But these few spots here, or this little stain, probably can be seen at 5 power. And if that's the case, then we take the coin down to mint state 69. Here's a question that says, what does the definition of hairline cross over to a clean coin grade? Some of the proofs you showed I would have discarded as clean. That's a very good question, and I would say it's certainly a matter of degree, and it's just how the coin would appear under light, how the luster would appear. But I would say that those hairlines on the proof coin, they were about as bad as example as I could find, so they would have probably come out as the just barely gradable range of proof 60 or 61. But much worse than that, it would have been cleaned. And in grading 103, which we'll be presenting a preview of next month, we do discuss what a formally cleaned coin looks like. And as you correctly pointed out, they're not a whole lot different than what we saw there. So that's a very good question. Okay, getting back to the high-grade proofs, now we'll look at what we might call a 68 coin. And here, you're going to see, if you look carefully here, a little discoloration here, very small spots here, a little bit going on here. On the back, again, a few little marks, a little light stain here. So, you know, you can sort of barely see it with the naked eye. You may still need some magnification to really tell, but if they sort of stand out, particularly this mark here or this spot here or this little stain here might be visible with the naked eye if you look carefully. So this would be a mint state 68. Now it would still be a darn nice coin, and if you just looked at it quickly, casually with the naked eye, it would still look pretty close to perfect. But there is enough that you can see with your naked eye that would qualify this coin not to be a 69 or 70. And then finally, down to mint state 67. Again, 67 in most coins is a pretty darn high grade, so by no means should 67 be considered junky. However, if you look at this coin with a naked eye, you would probably pick up some of the spotting that's taking place right here, or some of the few spots that you're seeing on the back here and here. So for a modern coin such as this, mint state 67 really is about as low as you can get for a grade where the certification would help the coin at all. Once you get down to 65 or 66, that's almost considered a defect, almost considered defective for an ultra-modern proof coin. In other words, the coin has to really have something pretty wrong to get down to 65 or 66. which of course is ironic because in a classic vintage coin that's a very good grade, but in an ultra high grade modern, not so much. The final area that we'll take a look at in grading 102 in our preview is series that are difficult or tricky to grade, okay? There's about 6 or 7 of these categories. Early pre-1816 copper had very variable and problematic planchet quality. So these coins present a problem. Early silver and gold coins pre-1809, striking issues and adjustment marks are often seen on those. 3-cent silver pieces were very thin and very small, and they have a lot of die clash and striking problems. Nickel coins, especially in the 1870s and 80s, can be very difficult to distinguish proof from mint state. Pre-1925 Standing Liberty quarters in low grade, due to the fact that the date was raised on the coin and wore off very quickly, caused some grading anomalies. Light friction that you see on cap bust halves, very often these were handled by banks, and even though the coins are uncirculated, they'll look like they have rub on the cheek. Type 2 $1 gold pieces, pretty much the same reason that 3-cent silvers have problems. Type 2 $1 gold pieces have problems. They're very thin, very small, and prone to problems. Indian quarter eagles and half eagles, due to their sunken design, or what we call incuse design, are also problematic. I'll jump in and answer a quick question here. It said, can some spotting occur after a coin has been slabbed that did not appear when it was originally graded? Unfortunately, the answer to that is yes, and it's really not a fault of the slab. It's a fault of the planchet preparation wash that the mint used. We started to see that problem on some, particularly on silver eagles, where we would see a coin that would be visually perfect, and we would slab it as a 70, and then oddly enough it would grow some sort of milky spots on the surface. This was due to the wash that the mint prepared the planchet with, that as it dried over time it began to leave spots. And originally we were taking some liability for these, and then finally realized that we really did nothing wrong and we were really getting hammered on some of these. So we are no longer grading mint state eagles mint state 70. So that was a lesson we had to learn the hard way. But yeah, the answer is that coins can spot even after slabbing. Now normally slabbing will reduce any toning or ordinary discoloration that you would see on a coin. It almost stops it completely. But these sort of white spots that were growing on silver eagles were unusual. All right, back to our topic here. Here are some of the problems that you'd find on early pre-1816 copper: clip planchets, laminations, off-center strikes, porosity, color impurity, and poor quality. And I illustrated this coin just to sort of show you in general what some of the problems are on these early copper coins. This is a very high-grade coin. You almost see some mint luster clinging around the figure here, no wear on the hair, but you look at the back here, there's a whole large area around 5 o'clock on the reverse that pretty much didn't get struck. Problems up here around 11 o'clock. Basically the coin is just pretty much a mess, and that's due to a variety of ills. Here's a die crack here. Another problem here. Roughness in the planchet up here. You can't even really see the TY of Liberty. Again, we illustrate in the full course, we illustrate all of these with photographs, but we're just taking a quick overview here. Some of these early pre-1809 silver and gold coins. Here's a weak strike. The coin on the left here is fully struck. The coin in the center Again, as a mint state coin, you're not seeing any wear here on the edges of the eagle, yet the entire center section of the eagle, the head and the chest of the eagle, and even the E pluribus unum crossing the head of the eagle is flat. This was due to strike, not wear. Okay, if this coin were worn, you would not be seeing these full feathers here, or these tips of the feathers here would be showing wear. This is a striking problem. Similarly, the same problem here, only probably even a little bit worse. No detail in the head, in the ribbon. You're missing a few stars. The upper part of the shield. This is a striking issue on this coin. Gold coins generally don't have the striking problems that silver coins have, but they're not immune. Here on the left you see a fully struck gold coin. This is probably a eagle. And you see a more weakly struck example here, lacking some detail on the head and a little bit on the ribbon here. Not nearly as bad as what you saw on the silver coins, but it just to show you that gold coins were not all perfectly struck. Also, you see a little weakness here. Adjustment marks are something that you occasionally will find. Adjustment marks was a scraping of excess bullion off the planchet before it was struck. In other words, the planchets, if they were slightly overweight or underweight, got a scrape from a file before striking to ensure that the coin was not going out overweight, in other words, containing too much silver. And planchet adjustment marks are usually very deep parallel scratches, and technically they should not hurt the grade of the coin since they were made and done at the mint. But as a practical matter, a collector is not usually fond of having a coin with adjustment marks. It's almost looks like the coin was defaced, even though it technically wasn't. And as a consequence, if a coin has adjustment marks, visually detract from it a great deal. It will impact the grade somewhat. We mentioned proofs in the 1870s and 80s are difficult to distinguish from business strikes. Here's a coin that, to my eye anyway, looks a whole lot like a mint state coin. Fact of the matter is it's a proof coin. And there are a lot of examples that we illustrate, usually with shield nickels or 3-cent nickels, where proofs in mint states are very, very deceptive. The early standing Liberty quarters, 1617 up through 1924, had a raised date. Okay, this is an example of a 1920. You almost can't see the date on this coin. It's almost worn off. In fact, only the 0 and part of the 2 is visible. Much more wear on this coin, the date would be gone, and we couldn't give it a grade at all. Yet take a look at the detail in the figure of Liberty. Now, when you look at the next 2 coins, here is a post-1925 date, or 25 and later coin, also in good condition. You see how much more wear there is on the rest of the figure of Liberty, yet with the date sunken like this, it's still very clear. Okay? You have to almost go nearly VF for a post-1924 date to get the same detail that you're seeing on a good coin of pre-1925 date. So if your first reaction to this is that's very confusing, the answer is yes, it really is. Normally this coin should really grade fine to very fine if you're grading it as a whole coin. But you could not go 3 or 4 grades below this and still have a visible date. And a date is essential for PCGS to grade a coin. So these are what we would call difficult. Finally, we'll take a look at Indian half and quarter eagles. They were unique in that the main device was sunken below the surface. That resulted in the fields of the coin being the high point, okay? And since there's no design detail in the fields, it makes grading these coins extraordinarily difficult, okay? Here is an extremely low grade 5 Indian. It's as low grade as good. Yet if you look in the recessed areas such as the necklace here, some of the areas here, even the eye, the nose, the mouth, the eagle's legs, the feathers, almost all the detail is still left on these parts of the coin. Now in a conventionally raised coin, this entire figure of the eagle's head would be pretty much worn flat. And the same thing with the eagle on the back. None of these feathers in the leg, on the breast, on the neck, tail feathers, back feathers, would all be worn flat by a graded good. So you can begin to see the difficulty. Here, the lettering, because the surface was the high point, is really going away. Same thing with the stars or Liberty here. Now to distinguish an AU from an UNC on a coin like this, you really again cannot look at the areas that might normally be expected to show wear, like the cheek or the tips of the feathers, because once again, they're not the high point of the coin. The fields are the high point of the coin. So to tell that, look carefully at the fields. This is that same AU coin that we saw before, and you see there's quite a few little scratches and marks. This kind of distinguishes an UNC from an AU, okay? This coin is AU, all right? Now this is the same portion of a previously seen coin, but this coin is mint state, okay? And you see virtually no scratches or marks in the fields. Again, this is not the normal place where you would look on a conventional coin. And that, again, is what makes these 2.5 and 5 Indians very difficult to grade. And once again, we'll go into more detail in the full course of Grading 102. Well, that puts us at 50 minutes. Again, like Steve said earlier, the Long Beach Coin and Stamp Expo on February 1st will offer the full course of Grading 102 as well as Grading 101 and 102. And 103. And you may feel free to contact PCGS customer service for more details. There's their toll-free number here and their email address here. And let me go check and see if there's any more questions that we have. Chris, I'm sorry I missed your question. You said, what grade is this? I'm not sure what coin that was. If you can type, if you're still on, if you can type what coin that was, I might be able to remember that. The copper coin near the end. Let me cheat here and go back to the would that be this coin here? You know, being as this coin, I believe this coin is uncirculated. I think this coin would have been a mint state 60 or 61. Would be my guess on that, because I really see mint luster on this, and some red, and I just see nowhere that we would have called this coin AU. But again, it's about as rough as you can get for a full mint state coin. So my estimate would be a 60, or maybe at most a 61, even if that much. It's often said that AU 55s and 58s are better than 60s and 61s, and that's this is kind of a living example of why that would be the case. We have any other questions? Okay, everyone, thank you very much for attending, and stay tuned for next month, and we'll do a presentation on grading 103. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.